Welcome to this Olympic edition of The Breakaway. My name is Ben Holden. Today we are talking 2022 Olympic hockey with Team USA forward Brian O'Neill. Brian currently plays for Jokerit in the KHL. He's been a pro since 2012 after he left Yale, where he played college hockey for 4 years for the Bulldogs and head coach Keith Allain. While at Yale, he posted 163 career points. In 2012, he embarked on his pro career, signing with the LA Kings, where he spent parts of 4 seasons playing in the American Hockey League for the Manchester Monarchs. From there, he spent 1 season in the New Jersey Devils organization, appearing in 22 games in the NHL with the Devils during the 2015-16 season. Since that end of that season, Brian has played for Jokerit in the KHL, now in his 6th year with a Finnish-based club out of Helsinki. In fact, he's known as Mr. Helsinki, something we'll talk to Brian about. At the time of the KHL pause in January, his Jokerit team was sitting in a tie for 2nd in the Western Conference, just 4 back of the top spot in the West. O'Neill also 3rd in the KHL with 33 assists in 41 games, and is also the top American-born scoring player in the league right now with 42 points. And without further ado, let's bring in Brian O'Neill, joining us now from Helsinki. Brian, great to see you, man. We appreciate you taking some time. Number one, congrats on your 2nd Olympic nod. How does that feel, and how does that make you feel when you hear me say that?
Yeah, a lot of good fortune. I think the past 4 or 5 years, I've gotten some good bounces, some good breaks, and that's led to some really nice opportunities for myself personally. Had a great time in 2018. Didn't get the result we wanted, but to have another crack at redemption and that another opportunity to get on the world stage again, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I presume you're like any guy that grows up in this country with your family. They put so much work into your career over the years, whether it's driving you to the rink, coaching, whatever might have happened in your family. What's the sense of pride like amongst your family, being a 2-time Olympian and the only guy on this U.S. team that can say that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I definitely think they're very prideful in that fact. I think, not taking advantage of the opportunity I have in the NHL, definitely something that eats at me from a career perspective. But having the opportunity to play in 2 Olympics because of my lack of success in the NHL and being over in Russia is something that there's a silver lining in that, and something that I take great pride in, and hopefully I could take advantage of another great opportunity.
Yeah, so I want to stick with that theme in terms of your family. Tell me about when you were growing up. You're from Yardley, Pennsylvania, for those that don't know, outside of Philly. What was it like in your family? Did your dad coach you, your parents' involvement? How deep does that go in your upbringing of playing the great sport of hockey when you were a kid?
Yeah, there wasn't much coaching going on. He was inspired by the 74-75 Philadelphia Flyers and their success. Decided to start my twin brother and I in figure skating when we were around 6, and then slowly worked up to some competitive ice hockey. But yeah, there wasn't too much coaching. He was more of a mentor and a mentor off the ice, and someone that paid the bills and drove me to all the ridiculous games, locations, times. Some of that's a bit hectic because there's not too many rinks from my area or in my area. So they made a lot of sacrifices for me to make sure I had the best opportunities in that area, which there weren't too many. So I'm really grateful to have had the career I've had.
That's awesome. So let's go back to 2018 in South Korea, your first Olympics. Tell our audience what it's like to march in when you're part of, in your case, the U.S. team. What's that feeling like? What do you recall from that moment when you guys got to do that in 2018?
Yeah, it's really cool. All the cliches that you would think, they do hold true at the Olympics. That opening ceremony is just so special because, especially for us, to the hockey players, we kind of felt like the replacement squad. Obviously, we aren't the best players in the world. They are in the NHL. So, and then you were surrounded by all these world-class athletes, whether it be Lindsey Vonn or John White. So experiencing that and just seeing all those dedicated athletes that they spend 3.5 years to try to qualify for 1 Olympic Games, and the amount of sacrifice that they put in is probably a lot greater than the sacrifices I've made from a professional standpoint. So being in that environment, it creates such a cool vibe and something I'll always remember.
Yeah, and I'm going to follow up in that. You mentioned the other athletes that spend 3, 4, 5 years preparing. this situation with you guys, with head coach David Quinn, it's a tough situation in that sense because you guys aren't even going to be together completely together as a group until you get to Beijing. You're in Helsinki, as I mentioned, being overseas, and I know your fiance, you had told me, is pregnant with a child, so that's a lot going on for you. That's a challenge for this team, isn't it? I mean, looking at this team, yeah, you've got all these pieces. You've got guys like yourself that longtime pro, but then you got some of these young guys, these college guys. How do you foresee this all falling into place from that standpoint, Brian, once you guys get to China?
It's a huge challenge logistically. Hopefully everyone tests negative in the lead up to travel, whether it be, the 2nd or 3rd of February. But if we can get everyone over there healthy and get by the first couple tests, that'll be a huge, huge benefit for us. You don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully if we do have a positive test, it's only a couple. So I think first and foremost, do that or take care of that step. And then compared to the other countries, yeah, we have a huge disadvantage in terms of, not having a camp before, like a lot of the other teams are doing. And we haven't played together at all. A lot of these European countries, they play in those international tournaments a couple times a year. They're very familiar with their player pool, and a lot of the guys play together on a regular basis. So something we'll have to overcome. But then again, I think if you look at our roster, especially the young guys, there's some high-end talent there. And in a very short tournament, 5 to 7 games, I think being a little naive and ignorant can be a big positive. It is a huge moment, the Olympics, and something that I think brings the best out of the top players. And I think some of those younger guys will do really well in that spotlight.
Yeah. So let's go back to 2018. You mentioned not the result you wanted. Walk us through what happened for you guys, kind of in a nutshell, in terms of some of the games and your experience on that team.
Yeah, Tony Granato and the coaching staff and the late Jim Johansson did a great job preparing us for that tournament. We didn't get the result we wanted, but we only lost one game in regulation. That was against Russia, and they were quite the powerhouse in that tournament. But we lose an elimination game against the Czech in a shootout. We hit a crossbar with a couple minutes left. We had some really good chances in overtime, but couldn't get it done. So losing in a shootout like that was definitely disappointing. But overall, if you look at the way our team played, I thought we played better than the result or our finish, finishing 7th. Losing against Russia, okay, but all the other games, I thought we had a really good effort and we were competitive, and we didn't really get hot on our special teams. I think if we had a little bit better special teams, we could have made a bigger run.
Yeah, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. Mentioned you were a college guy. Everybody on this team either played or is playing college hockey, all the staff. And to go back to a point you made about back when you were a kid, there weren't a lot of opportunities. There weren't a ton of rinks back then, but times have changed, certainly. I know in your part of the country where you grew up here in the U.S., what kind of statement does that say about college hockey here in the U.S., that all of you guys are products of college hockey?
Yeah, I think if you look recently, too, a lot of guys are leaving college and then having a lot of success right away at the NHL level. You look at a kid like Adam Fox, Exhibit A, but yep. Seeing that success isn't surprising because you're only playing 30, 40 games, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but developing as a human being and as a person is really important, especially when you get to the pro level. So I think having that experience in college is very beneficial for someone, and the level of play, especially those top teams, if you're playing a top 20 team, it's really good hockey. And I think you'll see that in the Olympics. These kids won't feel out of place, and I think they're going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, let's stick with that theme, college-wise. You're a 4-year guy. I have a ton of respect for that. I've been around the college game for about 20 years now. And I really respect the fact that you and a guy we're going to talk about that you played with, Andy Mealy, who joined us yesterday, another member of the U.S. team. Talk to me about that experience. How much did that help your development? Did you notice it each and every year, or was it one big jump when you were playing at Yale that you kind of figured it out, as we say in the hockey world?
Yeah, you get better every year, or you're supposed to. I thought that was the case with me. Got a little bit more comfortable every year, and I never got to the point where I felt I should leave, or because if you're not completely dominating college hockey, you're not going to be able to step into an NHL game or be a dominant AHL player. And I never got to that point in college, but I did slowly get better and got to the point where I was very comfortable in college hockey. But it's a huge step to pro hockey.
Yeah, so you and I are meeting here for the first time. So one thing that I do, and I'm sure you do it for your home state and where you're from, is you rep the flag, as I say. And doing some reading last night, one of your teammates that I understand you were very close with, Andrew Miller, who was a massive part of that Yale team like you were, good Michigan guy. I remember doing his games in the high school tournament. Just talk about some of the memories you have with guys like Andrew and some of your other teammates at Yale in that 4-year run you guys had.
Yeah, I got to play with Andrew prior to Yale too in Chicago. He's one of my best friends. We've been extremely close since our time in Chicago when we were 19. So he's been a wonderful asset to me on and off the ice. Helped me a lot at Yale on the ice, and he's been a great friend off the ice. And I think that's what's special. I mean, every college says there's great culture, and
yeah.
I'm sure there is, but there was something special going on there when I was there, and once they got rid of me, they ended up winning it all in 2013. So I was super pumped for those guys. I wish we could have got it done, especially in 2011. I thought we had the best team in the country. I had an unfortunate couple penalties called in the second tournament game, which we ended up losing. But just a special group of guys that was there, and I'm pretty friendly still with most of my teammates. So. A 4-year experience that I'll never forget.
That's awesome. So, I mean, this Chicago Steel team that you guys had must have been one heck of a team, because I learned yesterday, Andy Mealy, who I mentioned, you guys were line mates, and I jokingly said to Meals, I said, well, I know Quinny. I worked with him for 2 years in the American League as his radio guy. I said, should I text Quinny and say, all right, here's one line, Mealy, O'Neill, and Agostino. Is that you in for that? I would presume you are.
Yeah, I don't think there's too many bad options on that roster with that talent pool. But yeah, having some familiarity with both of those guys would definitely help, especially in a short tournament. It's going to be hard to find chemistry right away. But then again, all these players are really talented players, and most players that have that talent, they seem to have chemistry with a lot of players. So I'm sure it'll all work out.
So who else was on that team? I mean, aside from, you mentioned Andrew Miller, you mentioned Mealy, yourself, who else was on that Chicago Steel team? Because for those that don't know, that is one of the best, absolute best franchises, organizations in junior hockey in the States. Who else was on that team with you, Brian?
We had John Moore, who's had a great NHL career. Drew LeBlanc ended up winning the Hobey Baker. Yeah. I think he's in Germany now. Andrew Miller had a good pro career. Obviously Andy Mealy, myself, a couple other guys that were drafted. But yeah, I mean, to have 2 Hobey Baker winners and then a couple NHL regulars, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, was Ryan Hardy with the organization then, or was that too early?
I think that was too early.
Yeah, okay. Because he's now with the Maple Leafs. Again, for those that don't know, he's now, the Maple Leafs hired him because of the job that organization has done with development. How tight are you and Mealy? And you're going to get reacclimated here. Do you guys stay in touch a lot? You play each other every now and then in the KHL. Are you guys still pretty good friends?
Yeah, I've always had a lot of respect for Andy. We were trying to team up at some point in Europe, just never found the right opportunity. But yeah, he's a player that I've always respected over the years, and I've obviously always followed since our time together in Chicago. He was a good friend off the ice there as well. So a player that I'm glad he's getting this chance in 2022. He deserves it, and playing against him a lot. I know all his tendencies, and there aren't too many better power play players that I've been around. So I'm sure he'll be a big help there.
Well, I said this to Andy, and I mean this kindly. You've heard this your whole career, and Andy has too, and his smile said it all when I brought this up. The undersized guy. You fit that mold, but man, you play so much bigger. I've enjoyed watching you play with Jokerit. You don't play like a guy that's 5'9", 5'10", whatever you are, and I mean that respectfully, you know that. What's the key for you? What have you learned over the years when you're not a 6-foot guy? How has that changed the way that you've had to play the game, Brian, going back to college and even now in the KHL as a pro?
Yeah, it's definitely a different game. I think the one thing I did that was wrong in North America was I tried to put on too much weight, and my body just didn't want to be at that weight, and it definitely took away from some speed and skating ability. So now being in Europe, the ice is a little bit bigger. We're getting closer to North American size rinks. We're pretty close to that now at Jokerit. Half the league's at 26 or NHL size rink. So it is getting a little bit more physical, but just picking my spots, knowing situations that I'm not going to win physically, and staying out of them. Obviously, the number one job for me is to play hockey, and the only way to do that is to stay healthy. So I take that very seriously. But then again, sometimes being so competitive, I find myself in some interesting situations on the ice. But definitely something I've learned over the years to pick my spots, pick my battles, know who I'm going up against, very aware of who I'm on the ice against, which is very important when you don't have too much leverage out there.
Yeah. So I would presume that your practices with Jokerit are pretty intense, because I absolutely love the way you guys play. We've had you guys on a bunch this year here on Portable TV. The grind, the hardness you guys play with. And you play that way. I mean, to me, you're one of the leaders in that regard. But some of these Finns that you play with, that you're gonna play against in the Olympics, I think there's 5 guys on the Finnish team, and then Sklenicka is also on one of the Olympic teams as well. Talk to me about that. I mean, what are those practices like? What are your training sessions like with your group that you have this year with Jokerit?
Yeah, it can get a little chippy in certain drills. The Finns are just, that's the way, they were raised. That's the way they were taught to play hockey. That culture, that hockey culture has always been like that, and something that they take great pride in. But yeah, we've had some intense practices. I mean, during the season nowadays, with most pro teams now, the way they run everything, a lot of it's just rest and recovery. So practices don't get too crazy or too physical, but the training camp can get a little physical at times. And I think that's what makes our team so consistent night in, night out, is the effort always is there, and there's a commitment to play physical when we need to play physical.
Yeah, you can speak to that more. I want to ask you about that with the Finns. I mean, Olympic-wise, to me, you can never count out the Finns or the Swedes. I mean, they're every single tournament, whether it's the World Junior Tournament, whether it's the World Championships, the Olympics. What is it about them? I mean, is it just what you said? Is it more than, like, they just seem like they don't beat themselves, Brian? Is that fair to say? And can you speak to that in terms of some of the teammates that you have that are Finns that you play with in Jokerit?
Yeah, they definitely don't beat themselves. They're always very well coached. They play within a structure. They're very disciplined in playing the system. And the biggest thing is they buy in. I don't know if it's something they teach specifically, but it seems like there's a whole lot of buy-in when they do play in those international tournaments. And it doesn't really matter what kind of roster they have. Usually you're going to get a pretty stingy defensive effort, and you're going to get good goaltending, and then you're going to get timely scoring, it seems like, or at least recently with all the success they've had on an international stage. And they will 100% be a huge favorite, in my opinion, after looking at that roster coming up here in the Olympics.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I'm sure you'll be relied on not only by the coaching staff with Quinny and all the staff in terms of those guys, but all the other guys that you know around the league. It's not like this is your first season in this league. You're now in season 6, so you know these players. Is that something you've talked about with Quinny? Will they lean on you guys a little bit in that regard, especially the 5 of you that are on this U.S. team that play in the K?
Yeah, I think they probably will at some point. I think if you look at our schedule early, Canada probably not going to be too much help, because there's not too many KHL guys, and then China will know well, and then Germany I won't know at all, really. So I think if we play a team that has a lot of KHL players like Czech or Finland, I'm sure there'll be some discussions. And it's nice personally playing against people that you've seen on a regular basis. It definitely gives you some level of comfort knowing most of the players on certain rosters.
Yeah. So I mentioned off the top your time, you leave Yale, you go to Manchester. Was Mark Morris your coach there?
He was.
He was. So you spent 4 years there, then you signed with the Devils. And I was, again, reading some stuff last night. It sounded to me like, and obviously you can tell me, that you always had a dream or a goal or a desire, whatever you want to call it, to live in Europe. Is that fair to say? And if so, kind of tell us the story of that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a dream or it might have been a desire at some point.
Okay.
I definitely wanted to be exposed to Europe at some point during my professional career. I've always, looked fondly upon Europe, especially in terms of some of the great cities. The quality of life seems to be really high, and I can attest to that now. And then just the style of hockey is something that suits me, or it suited me a lot better back then, being a smaller guy. Having the bigger ice surface, being less physical, stuff like that could definitely help extend your career.
Yeah. So getting into Helsinki, how did that all work? How did you end up signing with Joker when you did after the 15-16 season? Walk me through that process for you. How did it all begin, becoming a guy that lives in Helsinki now, calls it home?
Yeah, after my brief stint with the Devils that I didn't take advantage of, I kind of knew that was going to be my last real chance. I was 27 at the time, not going to get another chance like that. And I accepted that and moved on. And in that process, decided to, identify which league that would be best for me. And we decided that it would be the KHL. And fortunately for me, Jari Kurri, the owner now of Jokerit, and the GM, he reached out, and because of his connections with the LA Kings organization, he was pretty familiar with me, and he offered me a 2-year deal. And it was a pretty easy decision after talking to other people in the agent community, and then talking to other people in Europe. No one had any bad things to say about Jokerit, and it's been a great experience and a wonderful 6 years for me so far.
So I'm dating myself. I'm 51, so I loved watching Jari Kurri. What a resource that has to be for not only guys like yourself, but younger players and running this team. Talk to me about that. What are some big things is he really hands-on, or does he kind of let the management team do their thing, or is he still pretty involved with you guys?
It's so cool. Sometimes I'm not totally used to it still. It was my 6th year, just having him around all the time. It's just, he's a hockey legend.
Yep.
And the biggest legend in Finland in terms of hockey. But the one thing I do respect about him is he does stay away from, he's never on guys too hard. He's very respectful of let the coaches do what they were brought in to do, and let the players be as comfortable as possible on and off the ice. So there are a lot of boundaries he has, and I think he does a phenomenal job, because it's got to be tough for him sometimes, because he's one of the best players of all time. So when he sees some of us make certain mistakes, I'm sure it's pretty frustrating. But he's been awesome with me, and someone that I definitely look up to, and he's a huge role model.
Does he ever get out and wheel around with you guys at practice or not?
I haven't seen that.
No?
I'm sure he skates. No, I haven't. I've yet to see that. So hopefully at some point I get to see it in an alumni game or somewhere in Russia. But yeah, I have yet to see Jari on the ice with us.
Yeah, we got about 2 or 3 minutes left here, Brian. I want to ask you a thought on your team. And you and I, we talked offline about Jillian Kemmerer, who's our insider, part of our team here. And as she's educated me throughout my first year in covering this league, she said the one thing that Jokerit has to learn how to do as a team is to be strong in the second half. Is that a fair statement? And what do you feel you guys need to do once play resumes here to stay where you're at and make a deep playoff run this year in the Gagarin Cup playoffs?
Yeah, I think that's a very astute observation. We haven't had a whole lot of second half success in the regular season, and we haven't had a whole lot of playoff success, which is probably because we're limping into playoffs some years. I think it takes a while to learn how to win in this league. I've had certain playoffs where I thought I've played well, and I've had certain playoffs where I haven't played too well. So it's a learning process, and playing against those top teams, they definitely play a different way, and certain things that work in the regular season won't work in the postseason. So it's something that we're aware of, and I think our schedule this year has been geared more towards rest and recovery. We had a bit of a harder training camp this year relative to most years, and I think focusing on rest and recovery, especially once November, December hits and it's dark, it's hard to keep the energy levels up here, and it's a tough time in terms of the schedule. So something we're aware about, and I hope I hope you're going to see some changes, but only time will tell.
Yeah, and that West, man, I mean, what an absolute meat grinder. I mean, as you know, over on the East, in the Eastern Conference, Ben Metalurg and Salavat, and then your soon-to-be Olympic teammate Steve Camphor, he's injected a lot of life into that Akbar's team. The playoffs should be fun. We can't wait to cover so many of your games. Like I said, we've done a lot of your games. So a couple little fun things here I want to throw your way. So where in the world does this guy from Yardley, Pennsylvania, how does he get nicknamed Mr. Helsinki? What's the story behind that, man?
Well, Jesse Uentu, who I've had the wonderful privilege of playing with for the last 6 years, he kind of just threw it out as a joke 3 or 4 years ago, because I am so complimentary of Helsinki in the media, and I do really love it. Just a wonderful place to live. So I think it was just a bit of a jab at me and an inside joke, and then the media got a hold of it. So now, fast forward 4 years later, and people are still calling me it.
That's cool. I like it. One thing that, again, Jillian pointed out to me, she said, make sure you ask Brian about the fact that you guys always play the Rocky theme in the arena at Hartwall. That's got to make you feel at home, right? Being a Philly guy?
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, what a small world. You have the goal song is literally from a movie that's based in Philadelphia. So just, I mean, crazy.
That's awesome. And then one other thing that I've learned about you that I think is real interesting, I will tell you this. I have a friend from my high school team that I played with. He's a Finn. His name is Dean Pakala. So I hope my Finn's on there. But he introduced me to the sauna, something that I've learned that you have an incredible passion for. Tell us why the passion runs so deep for you when it comes to using the Finnish sauna.
Well, I mean, there's just so much research coming out every year, it seems like, and all the positive benefits of the sauna, and then just the way it makes me feel, especially on days off or just not feeling great during the day, a little brain fog. I'll just jump in the sauna for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and that seems to do the trick. So something I've, built into my routine at the rink on a daily basis, and something I genuinely look forward to. So I think if you look at the Finns in general, they seem like a pretty healthy bunch, and I think a large reason is because of the sauna.
So are saunas in Finland, are they like, say, a hot tub would be here in the U.S.? Like, hey, I got a hot tub on my deck. Is that how it is over in Finland with saunas?
Yeah, most apartments have access to a sauna or have a sauna in the apartment. I think there's over 2 million saunas in Finland. So, and I don't know, I think there's obviously under 6 million, but it seems like everyone has access to a sauna.
Am I sensing maybe you may go in that direction when you're done playing? Is that something you considered or not?
Staying in Finland?
Well, staying in Finland and staying involved with the sauna.
Yeah, I would love to get involved in a sauna company. I think a lot more people in the U.S. could use the sauna. I mean, you just have to sit down for 30 minutes, and that mimics a cardiovascular workout. So that's a pretty easy selling point, especially for people who don't want to work out. I think it would fit in quite nicely in most U.S. households.
That's awesome. A couple quick things before I let you go. The movie Miracle, I know you've seen it probably many times. What's your favorite scene from that movie?
Oh, it's got to be the bag skate when they're getting skated. And then he says, what does he say?
Who do you
Team
play
USA
for?
Or who do you play for? That scene's world class and just a cool movie. I mean, it's one of the best sports movies I've seen. And obviously I'm a bit biased, and those guys did a tremendous thing for USA Hockey. And I'm sure a lot of people growing up in that generation were tremendously inspired. So USA Hockey is still reaping the benefits of what that 1980 team accomplished.
Have you ever met any of the guys that were on that team?
Unfortunately, no. I would love to, but have yet to meet one of those 1980 players.
And do you have a favorite player, like a guy that, from the movie or whether it was watching the game back that you could relate to, or you just liked him in general?
I mean, Eruzione, that story seemed like a really hard worker, team guy. Obviously, he was the captain, and he scores that huge goal. I mean, it's hard not to be sentimental when you're thinking about that guy's journey and what he did for Team USA. So he would probably definitely be my favorite.
That's awesome. Brian, really appreciate this. Great to to meet you as close as we can now. You're from Finland. You're over in Finland here in D.C. Really appreciate this. Thanks for your openness and taking the time to do this with us here at Portable TV. All the best to you and your teammates. Safe travel, and you never want to see a dash in hockey, but test negative, my friend, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the ice in Beijing.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I appreciate it, and we appreciate all you guys do for the KHL. It's fun to watch.
Thanks, Brian.